Chad, we are back with college football week 0 picks. It's the preseason-ish, right? We have some games that actually count. We're still going to come to you with some playoff picks and Heisman Trophy picks right here in this video. How you feeling with college football only a few days away?
Once we started recording yesterday, just felt the juices started flowing. So I'm starting to get real psyched. I'm starting to dive a little bit deeper, get my gambling juices flowing, getting my futures flowing. Starting to feel pretty good about the analysis so far.
Well, let's hop right into the board. We have the very first game of the 2024 college football season taking place over in jolly old Ireland. We have Florida State taking on Georgia Tech. Florida State is now an 11.5-point favorite. And honestly, I kind of like them in this game. I know that Georgia Tech is a team on the rise, right? They have Haynes King at quarterback. He's a former, 4 or 5-star recruit. And they, improved over the course of the regular season last year. Now Coach Brent Key into his second year, and he's doing very, very well on the recruiting trails for next year so far. That being said, Florida State has the number 3 overall transfer class. Mike Norvell has done a really great job over the last couple seasons at bringing in those transfer players. And yes, they did lose a ton of talent like Jordan Travis and their top receivers, running back, all gone. But they brought in DJ Uyunglele, one of the former top quarterbacks in the country from Clemson, from Oregon State. Now he's coming in as a 5th-year starter. He brings a lot of experience. He knows what it takes to get the job done on the road, overseas. I like Florida State in the spot. They're going to be super angry as a program after they got snubbed from last year's college football playoff. And now they have an opportunity in front of the entire world to show why they should not be left out of this year's college football playoff. I'm riding with the Seminoles minus 11.5 in Ireland.
Okay. I have mixed feelings about this. Shout out to Mike Norvell from my alma mater at UCA, played wide receiver down there. A lot of people don't know that. Pretty good football player. I'm really struggling with no Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis was the light in the way for them last year, and we saw what happened when he went down. The team, they got up for the game and they got put down. So can DJ make it happen over the course of the season? Maybe yes. I know that the nerves are going to be pretty high in this first game playing Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has a history of knocking off some giants when you look at their history with, like, say, Clemson, the other juggernaut in the ACC. So did DJ lose his job? Did he win the job at Florida State? I don't know. I'm a little bit. I got mixed feelings about this, but I may trust you when it comes time to kick.
Well, this game I think is a lot different than a bowl game against Georgia after they got snubbed, right? The team definitely wasn't trying for that game. I'll agree with that, but they're going to be hyped up for this season. I trust their coaching staff to get them ready to go.
Yeah, Norvell's a great coach. He's done a lot with every team that he's ever coached. So, I mean, if there's someone you can trust in, I think it's him.
All right, moving on to another ACC matchup in week 0. The SMU Mustangs have moved into that conference. They're 27.5-point favorites against Nevada. What do you think about that spot?
This is a weird one. So typically the way that I like to look at the NCAA and even the NFL is I come from just a straight statistical background, and then I try and find little keys that I like or I don't like to try and win my favor. So in this game, when I look at my numbers, this is really a 17-point spread, but it's showing 27.5, which most people I think are probably going to say that's way too many, which is exactly why I'm going to take SMU minus 27.5. I like Preston Stone returning. They got a lot of returning offensive weapons, a couple of running backs who can run in and out. They've got several wide receivers that I think they're just going to have a lot of assets. And early on, I think that they're going to try and show the ACC that they can make a push to win the ACC. You look at their preseason futures, they've got about a 10-1, which I think is the best value if you're looking to find some value in the ACC outside of Clemson and Florida State.
Yeah, I think Preston Stone is one of the best returning quarterbacks in the country. He was slinging it all over the field last season. We know SMU has a super, super high-powered offense. And you look at the total here, 57. I mean, when they're 27.5-point favorites, if it's only going to be 57 points, that means the books are thinking Nevada's probably not going to score too many. So if Nevada's not going to get more than 14, 17 here, and SMU's getting somewhere around 40, right? I think SMU's probably going to end up blowing the doors off it. I think the over is actually a good look here, but I also lean with you towards SMU.
Yeah, I like the over too.
Well, while we're hoping there's a lot of points in this game, we know there's going to be a lot of points for these guys coming up in the future. We're talking Heisman Trophy winner picks right now. Dylan Gabriel is the overall favorite. He's plus 700 according to FanDuel. That's where we're getting all the odds for today's futures video. You'd like him to win the Heisman. He's one of your top picks. Tell us why you think so.
Yeah, it's no surprise. He's the favorite, and it's a safe bet to take a favorite. I don't know the numbers on the favorites to the Heisman's futures throughout the years, but the numbers on Dylan Gabriel, I do know. Last year at Oklahoma, transferring into Oregon, like you said, threw for 30 touchdowns, 3,600 yards, the most in his career. And now he's on the second highest scoring team from 2023 at Oregon, second only to Jaden Daniels, Heisman winner at LSU. So I think the big thing here is they're now in the Big Ten. Traditionally, there's some teams in there that have some excellent defense, like Iowa, but they don't play Iowa this year. So I really see them moving the ball around, scoring a lot of points, and most of all, I just like his situation.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon, we know, has a very prolific offense. They love to run those, quick throws, move up and down the field. They're one of the highest scoring teams in college football every single season. They have some of the best receivers in the country. And Gabriel, again, he had great numbers, like you said, last year, now moving to an offense that he was able to seek out the coaches that he wants to work with and the scheme he wants to be in. It's tough to not see him having a great season. Oregon is very likely to make the college football playoff. I think nowadays with the 12-team playoffs, what we're going to need to see is if you don't make the playoffs, you're almost going to have no shot at winning the Heisman, right? Like if in the 14 playoffs, okay, if you missed it, it kind of is what it is because maybe it's a more defensive team like Michigan where there's not like a real candidate or something like that. But nowadays with so many opportunities to make it, if you miss the playoffs, I think you're not going to really have a shot. So I think if you're going to see our picks are going to fall in line with that, they're on a lot of playoff teams, and Oregon looks to be just as good a shot as any of them to make the playoffs. So I think Gabriel's a really, really strong pick. Plus 700 is favored for a reason. Well, another guy that I'm looking forward to have a huge year is Jalen Milroe. Staying at Alabama, not like Dylan Gabriel who's transferring, but he is getting that new coach coming in, Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer coached Michael Penix to a number 2 finish in the Heisman last year. Frankly, I think he was robbed and should have been number 1. But Milroe, people kind of dog on him for his abilities as a thrower. They say he's kind of just a run-first kind of quarterback, and he is an amazing runner with great speed, great size. I mean, he had 12 rushing touchdowns last year. But he threw for almost 3,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. The passing totals were really not too bad. And with DeBoer now coming in, I'm expecting his pass game to take a major step up. He's going to have tons of opportunity in big-time games against Mizzou, LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Georgia to make statements on national stage with big wins. The odds are absolutely crazy to me for a very, very talented Bama quarterback in full of a league, where there's not a lot of great, most of the top quarterbacks left for the NFL. I know Gabriel is a top candidate also, but Milroe might arguably be the best returning quarterback in college, at least in terms of athleticism. So, new scheme, Bama, I love the 1,400.
Yeah, I think you touched on it. If you like what Kalen DeBoer did with Phoenix, you're going to love what he does with Milton, right? I mean, you've got a much more athletic quarterback, but like you said, he's kind of caught some flack on his ability to throw. So I just hope that we get second half of the season Milroe as opposed to first half season Milroe, because last year I think that's where a lot of the doubt came from, right? Early on, they just didn't seem to get it done with his arm, so he had to use his legs. Team started to stack on him a little bit, and then he started to air it out. Just ask Auburn, right?
Yeah, Auburn, that 4th and 31. I think they're going to have nightmares of that in their future. Well, moving on from another quarterback from the SEC, you got another Big Ten quarterback here, Will Howard of the Ohio State University. Another transfer. What you got about him?
Yeah, so this is my plus 1,400 kind of weird odds. I see the situation again. And like you said, when it comes to this season's Heisman candidates, you've got to pick a team that's going to make the playoffs, because anybody who plays outstanding, their team doesn't make the playoffs, it's just going to be really hard for them to do. So you look at Will Howard, plus 1,400, coming in from Kansas State transfer, 6'4", 240 pounds. And apparently Chip Kelly says he can run 22 miles an hour. I don't know about that, but apparently he's a lot quicker than people are giving him credit for. So he won a Big 12 championship at Kansas State in 2022. He's the career touchdown leader at Kansas State. I love those stats. And now he's on a team that can win it all, or he can even go 11, 12 win games. What's not to love in Chip Kelly's offense? And then when you start to look at some of the weapons that he has, and we'll just go down the list here. Emeka Ekbuga, another guy I'm really high on at this level and at the next level for my fantasy football teams. Jeremiah Smith, a true freshman, overall #1 recruit in NCAA 2024. This kid's going to be a standout. He's going to have tons of targets. He's going to have tons of weapons. And you got to throw in Cardinal Tate as well. So I love the situation as far as his weapons, the coaching, the size, the speed. And again, it's not to love.
Yeah, I really like Howard as a pick here as well. I loved him at Kansas State. I thought he was one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the country. And now, obviously, moving to Ohio State, he's going to have a much bigger spotlight on him. So, won't be fair to call him underrated anymore, but you hit the nail on the head. I mean, Ohio State has been wide receiver U for a long time. Sure, they lost Marvin Harrison Jr., but they got so many studs on the team. Cardale Tate, as you said, I think he's a complete beast. He's going to step up and be a really, really good starting receiver alongside Igbuka Smith. They just got a completely stacked team. One of the big concerns, I do think, is the running game for Ohio State. They did get Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss. He is one of, if not the best running back in the country. Certainly is the best in college football 25. If you know, you know. But they have a really, really strong team overall. If the running game steals too many touchdowns from Howard, inside the red zone, that maybe could be an issue. But I find it very hard to see Howard playing the entire season and not making it to the Heisman Trophy finalist ceremony at the very least. And, another guy who I would not be surprised to see in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony is one of his feature rivals from the University of Michigan. And no, I'm not talking about Alex Orty at quarterback. The only running back on this list for us today, Donovan Edwards, plus 9,000 to win the Heisman. These odds just seem absolutely insane. We know that Michigan loves to hand the ball off. But Sharon Moore, their new head coach, he was the acting head coach while Harbaugh was suspended last year. He actually ran the ball at a higher rate than Harbaugh did. It was over 66% in the 3 games that Moore was head coach. And Blake Corum received a overwhelming lion's share of those touches. We know that Moore wants to hand it to the featured back. Corum is gone. We've seen what Edwards can do, right? In the national championship game, he had an absolutely insane game. It's just the opportunity is going to be there. He's going to have some of the biggest carry numbers in the country. He's on a team with a great offensive line, with a great defense. So they're going to want to ice games by giving him the ball and bleeding clock. Again, let's say Michigan ends the season somehow, number 1, number 2. There's a very feasible chance that could happen with the strength of their defense. It's not going to be orgy with the stats. They're not going to give it to, Mason Graham or Will Johnson. If anyone wins the Heisman Trophy for Michigan, it's going to be Edwards. And I think he's worth a sprinkle at these super long shot odds.
I love these odds. 100 to 1, right? It's what FanDuel's showing. Those are beautiful odds, especially like you touched on. You've got one of the best defenses in the NCAA. And what does that mean? That means clock control. That means run the ball, run the clock out. A lot of scores from this guy. And if you look back at the history of the guys who are the Heisman candidates, the top candidates or even Heisman winners, they're big backs. 6'1", 212 pounds, fast, shifty, can catch balls. They can pound the inside. So I love Donovan Edwards here, especially at the odds that they're offering right now. I think that's a good pick.
Well, Donovan Edwards and his Michigan Wolverines did win the college football playoffs last year, but now it's a new season, and with that brings a new 12-team playoffs, which is why the odds may seem a little short for a team like Mississippi, minus 130 to make the playoffs.
Yeah, 130, minus 130 is not really a hero pick at this point, but I think it's a smart pick and something that we've touched on a couple of times already, especially preseason, is the strength of schedule. So you've got these teams with the consolidation of these conferences, like in the SEC West, matchups that have always happened in the past, like Ole Miss and Alabama. And Alabama's absent from the schedule this year, which I think is a huge, huge key for this team to make the playoffs. So when you look at their schedule, you've got Georgia in Oxford, which I think would be an excellent game. Can't wait to watch that. Hopefully both teams are coming in at either all win or no losses or one loss to make kind of make a push for the end of the season. So you got Georgia in Oxford. You've got OU in Oxford, which I think, again, another great game. Can't wait to watch it. But the real test, I think, is going to be in Death Valley. So Ole Miss goes to LSU in November. That's going to be a tough test. But I think if they can get past 2 of the 3, which is maybe your OU and LSU, I really love their chances to make it.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at the playoffs this year is I feel like the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have 7 combined teams. There's just too many good teams overall. So I really do feel like if you have 3, maybe even 4 losses, you're going to have a shot to make it from the SEC and the Big Ten. Big 12 will probably send 2, and ACC will send 2, and then there's that one, outside of the power conferences that guarantee the spot. But yeah, exactly as you said. Mississippi, again, unless they get injuries or chokes, they really have 9 games they have no business losing. So then
Yeah.
it's just like, can they win any of the three against Georgia, Oklahoma, LSU? Because if they can get even one of those wins, they're now 10-2. They're already preseason ranked number 6. They're not going to fall that far for losing to two of the other top teams in the country. It would be pretty shocking for a 10-2 Mississippi team that has a marquee victory to get left out of a 12-team field. I feel pretty good about this pick at -130.
Yeah.
And then speaking of SEC teams, I like Alabama as well to make it. They're even odds right now, which, it feels a little crazy. I know Nick Saban is gone, but this is still a team that is complete of 4 and 5-star studs. They've got Jalen Milroe. They've got tons of these guys. And now Kalen DeBoer, who made the playoffs last year, made the national championship game last year. I know Bama's got a relatively difficult schedule, but, the toughest games are at home against Georgia. I think that they're going to have plenty of opportunity. And again, if they can go 9-3 with their schedule, there's no way they're getting left out. Not with their name recognition, not with their star power, not with the good wins they're going to have on their schedule. And I think the team is going to be looking really, really good this year. I was on their win total over, so that means I already think they're going to have 10 plus wins. So this is a no-brainer for me. I love Bama to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, this makes sense. Name recognition, it comes down to it, and it's them versus someone else with the same record in a different conference. You got to give Bama the nod. So I think this is a good pick as well.
We already saw it last year, them versus Florida State, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, Florida State was an undefeated team that missed the playoffs last year. So was Liberty. No one was really calling out for them to make the playoffs with a 4 team, but they would have been in if it was a 12 team last year. And you like them to be that non-power team in this year.
Yeah, it's kind of my long shot. It's not really long shot odds plus 520, but they're the most likely to go 12-0. And if you look at the strength of schedule, depending on where you look, these guys have the easiest schedule in all college football. So it's really kind of a fun pick to kind of pick up a little bit of heat towards the end of the season, be fun to watch. And their hardest game is at Appalachian State. So if we're talking about a 12-team playoff and we're talking about 12-0 teams need to make it in, I think this is the one that you target.
Yeah, and you see a lot of the top, minor teams every year, like they lose a lot of their guys, right? James Madison was their top team last year. Their coach left for Indiana. He brought a lot of their guys with them. Jamie Chadwell stayed at Liberty. A lot of their top guys, Caden Salter stayed. They have a lot of the talent from last year's team that's with them. I would be pretty shocked if they lost anyone on their schedule. They're going to be probably double-digit favorites in every single game. I think the real question is there going to be another, non-power conference team that can compete with them for that spot? Is there going to be a team maybe like a Boise State? Who knows? But I think for the odds, Liberty is definitely looking really, really good. So I mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be 7 or, maybe even 8, but probably 7 of the Big 10 SEC teams make it, and only 2 Big 12. But when you look at the Big 12, I think that there's a lot of possibilities for who those teams can be, and some of them are actually having really good value. I want to start off by talking about Utah, right? Because Utah is a team that kind of flied under the radar last year, and that was due to the fact that Cam Rising, their quarterback, missed the entire season. Their offense was just not inspiring to watch. They weren't having many big plays. It was a defensive-focused team in the Pac-12, which really isn't defensive-focused. So, no one was really talking about them all too much. But now, Cam Rising is back. He's like a 6th or 7th. I believe he's the oldest player in college football. Actually, that's not true because I know there's Monty Harrison, who's a former MLB player, who's now on your Arkansas Razorbacks. But outside, maybe like in terms of most years in college football, Cam Rising, this is his 6th or 7th year. He's got a ton of experience. Utah in the Big 12 has an incredible defense, an incredible home field environment. No one has really, faced them, so they don't know in that conference what that, environment in Utah is like. So I think that Utah's got a really, really nice schedule. They can probably make it to the conference championship game, even if they somehow lost to both Oklahoma State and Arizona, which are by far their 2 toughest games on the schedule. 10-2 with Utah should probably make it out of the Big 12. I really, really like them in this spot.
Yeah, they don't play Kansas. They don't play Kansas State. 2 of the teams that we've kind of highlighted to be pretty good in this conference this year. So they've skirted that from Kansas and Kansas State. Like you said, do they beat Arizona? Do they beat Kansas State for the conference title? Or do they become one of the 7 teams that gets in?
Well, one of the teams they avoid, as you said, was Arizona, and their odds just look absolutely insane. Plus 1,100 to make the playoffs. When they got guys like Fafita and McMillan, why is it so low?
I have no idea. When I go and I look at the futures here, this is strictly a value play for me. I like Arizona to take the over on the season in wins. So, like you said, I love Noah. Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, yes, last year. He's throwing a T-Mac, one of my favorite wide receivers in the NCAA. They play Kansas State and Utah, which are their only two top 25 teams. So the schedule allows them to really kind of hold the keys to their own future.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's maybe concerned about coaching, right? They lost their head coach, and most of their teams that we're talking about for the playoffs have a lot of coaching stability. Literally every team has had their head coach stay there for multiple years, with the exception of Alabama, who, okay, fine, they just took the reigning national champion runner-up as their head coach. Like, yeah, they're going down from Saban, sure, but it's not as big of a step down as potentially Jed Fish to Brent Brennan. But I still really like Arizona, as you said. Their schedule is great. The Big 12 has a lot of opportunity. There's no reason why they couldn't win the Big 12. And for these odds, I would definitely be sprinkling on them as well.
Oh, yeah. Big sprinkle here.
And then the final team I want to talk about for the Big 12, as we mentioned, is Kansas. Plus 700. But we're very, very high on them. They brought so many guys back. Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal, Highshaw, Arnold, Grimm, Lance Leipold at head coach. All these kind of factors that we're looking for in terms of returning production, continuity, and schedule. As we said earlier in the win total video, we like them to go over 8.5. So if they're getting 9, 10, or more wins in the Big 12, they're going to be threatening for that conference championship game as well. And I think that there's, the three teams that we mentioned, plus probably Oklahoma State, which we didn't like as much for the odds-wise. I think 2 of those 4 teams are going to make the playoffs. So taking 3 of the 4 probably is a decent way to return some money there.
Yeah, no, when you look at the odds, Kansas, the only team that's kind of lower than them, or with better odds, I would say, is Arizona. You've got Kansas State and Utah both ahead of them. So if you're looking for a little bit of value and you love Jalen Daniels, the X factor, I think this is a great way to spend your money.
Well, that is going to do it for this episode of the BroThrow YouTube show. We did a good job covering playoffs, Heisman, and Week 0. If you want to bet on any of our Week 0 picks, or any NFL, MLB, NBA, PGA, MMA, any sport you want, go to brothrow.com/YouTube to sign up and place all your action there. Who knows? Maybe you'll take one of our bets. But Chad, that is going to do it for us. We will see you in the next one, where we're talking Week 1 college football. And of course, your NFL special picks coming very, very soon. Hey guys, see ya.